I recently took a break from most of my business activity, and that allowed me to kind of take a step back and see things from a bigger picture perspective. It has changed some of the ways I think about what I'm doing and how I'm working. And one of those things I want to share with you today, because I think for a very long time, I made a mistake in, you could say, almost how I manage myself. Today, let me briefly explain what that is and explain how I'm trying to fix that mistake. So let's take this as the premise. The stated goal is I want to do my best work. This, I think, is a really good way to frame a goal because it makes sense across multiple dimensions. I mean, it makes sense from the perspective of productivity, right? Obviously, I don't want to be doing stuff that I'm not very good at. I don't want to be wasting my time. I don't want to be inefficient. So doing my best work could be interpreted as a productivity statement. I want to be highly productive, but it contains more than that. Doing my best work is also probably where I can deliver the most value. So as an entrepreneur, although I guess also as an employee, this would be true. This is where I can get paid the most. People are more likely to pay me more for my best work than for not my best work. So this could also be framed as a statement about having a better career, making more money, getting paid more, or increasing my chances of success at whatever I'm doing. But then also, doing my best work is a life quality thing. Like I want to spend my time doing things that feel good and that are worthwhile. And one of the things that's most satisfying in life is to do good work. I'm making this as a universal statement. I know from experience that this is true for me, but I think it's fair to say this seems to be universally true for humans. Certainly, the whole research into flow states seems to suggest this. We see actually a lot of evidence that people want to have some kind of a purpose. We want to purposefully engage with the world. We want to feel like we matter. One of the best ways to do that is to do work where you feel like I'm doing my best work. I'm doing something that matters. I'm actually contributing. This is also just about, hey, I want to live a good life. I want to have this kind of life. And as a side note, that's also something that really became clear to me very quickly when I took a break. So when I stopped making content for the first time in a really long time, and I also just worked a lot less. I didn't work zero. I wasn't quite capable of doing that, but I worked a lot less for several months than I can remember ever working. It's certainly in the last 10 to 15 years. And yes, this was nice. And I spent time in Bali and I spent time traveling and going to workshops and retreats and doing all kinds of stuff that, if I was like an Instagrammer or something, I guess I would have a flashy reel of stuff to show here, but I didn't record any of it, so I don't. But just take my word for it. I was doing the kind of stuff that you would imagine you might do if you take a sabbatical, really take some time off. I was doing quite a bit of that type of thing. And this was wonderful for a while, but then very quickly I realized that I miss doing creative work. Yes, it's nice to take it slow and to be more focused on just myself and more focused on learning things. It's great. I love learning things, but without that creative output, there's really something very fundamental missing in my life. So that was on my mind as I was coming out of my break and getting ready to jump back into work and considering, well, what should I do? What should I continue doing? What should I stop doing? Should I continue doing anything? I really wanted to question everything here. And again, the leading question being, what do I do? I know that I want to do work, but I want to do my best work. I want to have work be something that contributes value to the world, where I feel in flow, where I feel like I'm doing my best. As an example of this, let's look at Quit by Healing, which is a channel that I started about 2 years ago, a bit less, I think. I started making content and the channel took off fairly quickly. I also did a lot of experimentation with short form content and all kinds of things. And in a pretty short period of time, I started getting thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views on my content. I had a rapidly growing following on TikTok, and then also the channel on YouTube started growing fairly well. And in a matter of a few months, I had over 1,000 members in a community. And at this point, I have hundreds of thousands of TikTok followers. I have around 13,000 YouTube subscribers. I have over 4,000 members in the community. And I've created a course that is selling on a regular basis. So this is a pretty good example of a content first business that I got all the signs of this is working. It grew fairly quickly, and overall this looks good. But still, I asked myself, do I want to continue doing this? Should I continue doing this? And if I ask myself this question, how do I do my best work? It's very clear that there are parts of this that I want to keep doing, and parts of this that I want to stop doing, because there are aspects of the work for Quit by Healing where I do actually feel in flow and I feel like I'm contributing value and so on. And there are aspects that feel like a waste of time that can be quite frustrating and add tension and stress to my life without adding value. For example, I really like creating content, especially a certain kind of content where I am essentially interacting with my audience, which is to say that I'll make content and then I'll get questions and comments and so on, and that sparks ideas for what to make next. So I'll have all these ideas for, I could make a video about this, I could make a video about that. It feels very dynamic, it feels very engaging. It doesn't feel like a chore, I have to sit down and record a video. It's like, there's all this stuff I want to talk about, and I know that there are people asking these questions. I know that I already know as I'm recording it that there are people out there who will find this helpful. That feels great. What I enjoy much less is making content like for the algorithm. And I've done this fairly successfully. I've got a lot of especially shorter form content that has garnered millions of views and hundreds of thousands of views. I've figured out how to do this, and sometimes it can also be fun to do, but it's not something that I really feel very driven to do. Essentially, the short form content and viral content thing was like interesting to me as long as it was a novelty, and then I felt like, okay, I think I figured this out. And now I don't really want to do it anymore. And another example is the community. Yes, the community grew very rapidly, and you could say that this is a great success and what an asset to have this community and so on. But it also feels like a fairly noisy place, and I don't think it's actually delivering that much value to the people in it. And ultimately, I don't feel satisfied doing work in the community. It feels like I'm mostly wasting my time. Often I post stuff and then, it kind of just gets lost in the feed. I don't know, did this even help anyone? Is this doing anything, right? But at the same time, it can take up quite a lot of time, and it feels more like a grind, or it feels like a waste of time. So this is to contrast, right? It's so different to do something where I feel like I'm in flow and I'm actually good at it versus doing something that kind of feels like a slog. And then as a final example, I'm also doing some coaching where I'm helping people one-on-one, and that is also very gratifying. I've always liked teaching. I have an enormous amount of experience teaching and mentoring people, and that translates over into coaching. Coaching is something that I discovered that I'm quite good at and I really enjoy. And it's super gratifying to see people make very quick progress and have like a front row seat to one specific person's progress. Very, very satisfying. So the way I look at this now is that my priority is to do more of what I'm best at. And so even though perhaps this community is a great asset, and even though perhaps I could grow my channel faster by doing lots of short content, I believe that it's actually better to stop doing those things and design my work to be more in line with my strengths and let my strengths lead to the results I want. Even if it's maybe a slightly slower path, even if it maybe means that I leave some growth opportunity or some monetization opportunity on the table, I think this is ultimately the right way to do it. And here's why. And this brings me back to the mistake I mentioned earlier. I got this idea from Jim Collins in one of his books, might have been Good to Great or Great by Choice or one of the other ones. I'm not sure. One of the things he found in his research into successful companies is that one of the most important things is to have the right people in the right seats. So what that means is regardless of exactly what your business plan is and what your product is and so on and so forth, your chances of succeeding are going to be enormously higher if you have really good people in the correct roles in your company. So you have essentially people inserted into the seats of your company in such a way that they are doing their best work. My experience working with people and employing people definitely confirms this. It is so important to find the right people and then give them roles where they can do their best work. It is so important to the success of a business to be able to do this. And the mistake I made is that I didn't treat myself as one of those people. So it's really as simple as that, right? This is a truth that applies to me too. I have to make sure that I'm in the right seat, that I give myself a role that also fulfills that criterion of basically where am I doing my best work? How can I remove the friction so that I can be doing my best work and not be held back and distracted by other stuff? Of course, there's always going to be work that has to be done that I don't enjoy. And the problem is if you're the founder of a small startup, it's always on you, right? Basically, someone's got to do it. Oh, it's probably me if I'm the founder. But something I could have done better in the past, and what I'm attempting to do now, is to recognize that as a problem and to try and fix it as quickly as possible. So instead of just going, well, I guess I just have to deal with the fact that there's all this work I need to do even though I don't want to. I want to now look at it as this is a mismatch between my strengths and the role I've given myself. And I need to fix that as soon as possible. I need to fix that by either hiring someone to fill those gaps or by just not doing that stuff. And that second option is usually much easier and definitely worth trying. I think we end up giving ourselves work that we just don't need to do. So, if I don't want to make viral short content anymore, the solution to that isn't necessarily that I have to hire someone who can make this kind of content and then somehow train them up so that they can write good scripts and so on for my niche, and then maybe hire someone to do the recording. And in the end, I'm hiring like 5 people to try and do this work. And yes, maybe I could build a system and automate it and outsource it and so on and get the result, but I can just not do it. I can just focus on other channels and it might work. Now, this is a bit of an experiment. I am doing this as a way of building in public. I'm sharing my thought process and my experimentation as I'm doing it. But right now, my thesis is that if I remove the work that puts me in a situation where I feel like I'm not doing my best work, and I give myself just the work where I'm doing my best work, that the increased quality of my output will compensate for missed opportunities on channels that I'm not exploiting. So let's see what results this change in perspective will lead to. I'll let you know in a future update. And in the meantime, you can ask yourself, are you doing the same to yourself? In what ways can you give yourself a role that is more fit to what you're best at? And I think this doesn't just apply to business. I think this applies to life in general. So those are my thoughts on this topic. I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts or feedback or questions. So go ahead and leave a comment below. Also, if you're interested in getting coaching from me, I'll put a link down below where you can fill out an application form. The thing I'm best at as a coach is helping you identify the sticking points in your life that are not obvious to you. So the things that are holding you back that maybe you just can't see. And I'm really good at pushing you towards doing some of the work that you've been avoiding, probably for a bunch of subconscious reasons. If that sounds like something you could use, click the link below and fill out the application form. And if you're new to this channel, go ahead and watch this video next.